Hi guys, so today I'm going to be talking about the insecurity of asymmetry or the asymmetry insecurity. I decided to make this video after seeing how trendy it was months ago to show how asymmetrical your face was on TikTok. There were multiple filters for this and also numerous audios dedicated to showing how asymmetrical your face was. I'm personally concerned by this, and this is why I wanted to talk about it, because it's a big insecurity that I personally share with quite a few, and it's quite a difficult insecurity to deal with, obviously. I mean, like any other insecurities. Anyway, time for a story time. When I was going to school and taking the bus, I remember being so focused on how asymmetrical my face was. It's very weird because I'm someone who is very self-conscious and very insecure and constantly worries about how worthy I am. But at the same time, I'm so confident because I constantly think that everyone who will see me will fall in love with me, and it's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, I guess it's my hopeless romantic side that just every time I think I'm going to see someone, they're just going to all of a sudden fall in love with me, and it makes me very insecure because obviously I feel like every time I see someone for the first time, I need to look perfect. I need to make a good impression, and I need to be as beautiful as I can be. And it's for that reason that anytime I took the bus to go to school, which was every morning for years, it's not so much now, but when I was in college, so in high school for Americans, I remember anytime I would sit on the right side of the bus instead of the left side. Every time a guy, no matter how cute I thought he was or not, anytime a guy would come up and, sit on the bus again, I was like, oh no, he is going to see my left side of my face and not my right side. And I was like, I blew my chances, not that I thought anything would happen. I mean, I'm extremely socially awkward, but every time I would sit on the right side, which was the side that displayed my left side, the side I was really insecure about, I was constantly thinking that they're seeing the ugly side of me. Personally, I guess I'm lucky because I only like one side of my face, which is more than none, but it does mean that I always compare my bad side to my good side. I don't put makeup on, but if I did, my left side would be the without any makeup side on. It would be the I just woke up side. It would be the zombie-like side. It would be the ugly sister, and the other one would be the pretty sister. And because they're so close together, because it is my face, every time I see myself in the mirror, you can't stop yourself from comparing each side. And it was something that was very difficult, and it still sometimes is, and I will talk about it more, how I sort of stopped myself from being so insecure about it. But when I was in high school or in college, it was a big thing because obviously at that time, you're so focused on being the best and being pretty enough, and when people might call you pretty, you think, oh well, then they must have not seen the bad side or something like this. And it's weird because you feel like no one is as asymmetrical as you are, which is not true. I think it is just because you have to realize that you finding your face so asymmetrical and being so insecure about it really stems from how fixated you are on your face and the way it looks, because you don't look at other people's faces with the same scrutiny, not even close. If you did look at other people's faces with as much attention and focus, you'd realize how asymmetrical some faces are, how asymmetrical some faces that belong to people you find attractive are. You just don't pay that much attention to it as you do with yours. You see the bigger picture in others and you pick the smallest details in yours, and I think that's where the real problem is. Because months after the TikTok filters, when I couldn't understand how I, came out of the room with such different features on my face from one side to the other, I started trying to look at other people's faces to try to see if it was just me or if other people really did have different features, because obviously people are not perfect. Even your ears are different from one person to the other, your eyebrows are different, and I don't know, I started trying to analyze people's faces a bit more than I did before, and I started noticing just how asymmetrical people are. Some people are insanely symmetric, but in general, so many, even models, they are very asymmetric, and I think we just don't realize that because we're so focused on ourselves and the way we look, and I don't know, we pick at each individual detail on our face. Whereas when we see other people, it's their whole identity that we look at. It's their whole face as a whole. It's never just that tiny eyebrow or the way one eyelash looks and stuff like that. So I think we really have to realize just how fixated we are on our faces, and obviously it's something that's ingrained in us. I mean, it's very difficult to stop ourselves from being insecure about the way we look, because we live in a society that so easily and freely rewards people based on how how their face and body looks. So it's obviously very difficult because you see people being rewarded, being given money, being famous, being celebrated for simply the way they turned out, you know? And obviously it seems like they have it the easy way, just based on something so ludicrous and so artificial. And it's very weird. I mean, I remember in primary school it was something else than asymmetry, but during that time I remember really not liking how my baby hair looked. And I had a friend who also had a lot of baby hair, but I didn't think it looked bad on her at all, quite the opposite. And so I couldn't understand why it was such a big problem on me but not on her. And so I wondered whether it was our slightly different partings that affected it, or the shape of our faces that were different, but no. I tried finding other answers and I just couldn't find any. And I think that's just a prime example that there are so many things that we find acceptable on others but we find revolting on us. And I truly believe it's something to analyze, or at least to realize that if you put yourself in anybody else's shoes and look at yourself from an outside perspective, basically detaching yourself from your body and face, you now being a stranger or a friend, I think you'd realize that you wouldn't think anything of that person. They're just anybody. The way they look isn't as horrifying as you originally thought when you were them. Ask yourself, if I saw myself from an objective point of view as a stranger or friend, would you really think any of those things you constantly think about yourself? Most definitely not. You probably don't even think those things about others, so why do you with yourself? Is there anything extremely special about you that excludes you from that same objective analysis? I don't know if that was very clear, but all I'm trying to say is anytime you feel bad about yourself, try to imagine how you would act if that person was an outsider, a friend, or a stranger. I personally know that anytime I feel like I'm doing something really awkward in public, I try to picture someone else I see in the street, for example, doing it and imagining my reaction. And most times I find myself not thinking too much of it, and I find it not actually being awkward. And it's only awkward if you make it awkward. So yeah, anyway, it's very weird to live with the insecurity of asymmetry because it's like you have two different faces and sides, and if you prefer one, then you might even think that one side is more you than the other one. And then you start trying to hide the other side or try to ignore the way the other side looks. That's what I did personally for years, and at first I didn't even realize I was doing it. But if you see on my Instagram feed, for example, every picture that I take is from a certain angle. It's the angle that shows my right side and hides the left side. When I look at myself in the mirror, I tend to also look at my right side instead of my left, and that just really reinforces your insecurity because it's only when you all of a sudden look at your other side that you don't like that you realize just how unusual it looks and how different and contrasting it is compared to the other side because you just don't look at it that often. And it can really make you feel as though you don't recognize yourself when you look at that side from how much you're trying to hide it, which just leads to a vicious circle of not feeling like yourself, wanting to ignore it and try to act as if it's not there, which is just the worst thing for you to do. But yeah, for example, for me, I try to ignore it. I try to make it seem as if it didn't exist, but can't hide something that's always going to be there, which is why there came a point when the body positivity movement came and I was like, okay, well, I'll just have to act as if I like it and I like everything about this side. And it's an imperfect solution, I would say. It's sort of better than hating it, but at the same time it's not very solid. It doesn't necessarily hold on too much. It just holds on to this kind of hallucination. And obviously I've seen people say that the more you tell yourself that you're pretty, the more it works, and it's a solution in itself. But I personally recommend body neutrality. And what's with body neutrality is that instead of being so focused on finding yourself pretty, you just accept that this is what you look like. It sounds weird and it sounds, I don't know, pretty unusual if you haven't heard of it, but it's true that with body positivity, you're still in that mindset of beauty is important, the way I look is important, and yes, the way you look might be important because it's the way people identify you, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be so focused on it all the time, whether it be being focused on how good it looks or how positive it makes you feel or how negative it makes you feel, because obviously with body positivity, you'll always have bad days. You will always have those insecurities in the back of your mind that might come back or something. Whereas with body neutrality, you're admitting that maybe you don't find yourself pretty, maybe you don't find your left side or right side very pretty or your whole face, but it doesn't matter. and it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's very rewarding and very satisfying once you get there, because you're basically saying that your value does not depend solely on how you look. Your beauty doesn't define you. And my favorite thing that I saw on social media was someone saying that the way I look is the least interesting thing about me, and I think that's something that you really should ingrain in yourself and try to convince yourself, because truly it's so important. I mean, I started making videos about a year and a half ago. I started in January 2021, and a big thing about making videos, especially the way I do them, where I have my face in the video, I have to edit the videos that I make, and so I have to constantly see myself in the videos. And at first I was really scared that I wasn't going to like how I look in everything that I do, and that I wouldn't be happy with the content that I made because it was just a reflection of what I looked like. But then for example, with my Make a Crown With Me, for a lot of it I was showing my left side, which I was not very bothered by when I edited it. And then when I posted it, for some reason I was very surprised. I was confused why I wasn't feeling that insecurity or frustration at having my left side look the way it does, the way I feel when I might look in the mirror, when I see pictures. And I think it was also because it wasn't just a still image, it was me doing something that I loved or that I appreciated and enjoyed. And I saw that video and I thought, I wasn't here to look pretty. I was here to make a paper crown and share that with other people, and that's it. And so anytime I do something, I constantly tell myself, I am not here to be pretty. I am here to make art. I'm here to simply exist. And I don't owe my beauty to anyone, because beauty doesn't define your worth. It's very difficult, but I think those are two things that you really should constantly tell yourself, and that one, you're not here to look pretty, you are here to to play video games, whatever you're doing at the moment. And the other one is to say that your beauty and the way you look is the least interesting thing about you, because it really is. It is so uninteresting. And yes, sometimes seeing attractive things, seeing beautiful things is very appealing to the eyes. That's why we make art, that's why we admire nature, stuff like that. But beauty is it just constantly changes, and we can't base our whole value on it when it's so fleeting and so insignificant, because it really is. And I still struggle with it, but I did this first with my nose. I have a crooked nose, and obviously it's not the conventional beauty standard, and so I remember being really insecure about it. I remember thinking, I don't like my nose and I wish I did not have this nose. And then I was like, okay, would you like to get operated, to not have this nose? And I knew immediately that I did not want that, because I hate operations. When I realized that I wasn't going to get myself an operation to change it, I knew that there was nothing I could do except accept it. I wasn't going to keep complaining about it if I wasn't going to change anything about it. So I just thought, okay, well, I'll just have to accept it. And that's kind of what I did. And after a while, after I accepted that this is what my nose looked like and I was never going to like it, I started to come around to it actually, and thinking, it's actually not that bad. And I started accepting the way it looked, and now I sort of like it, and I'm not ashamed to have it be seen in photos. And I think that's what's going to happen with my left side. The more I acknowledge it, the more I accept that this is what my left side looks like, the less I try to ignore it, the more I'm going to be okay with it. Because I don't know, I'm a twin, but I always imagine each side of my face to be twins. It may sound stupid, but a lot of time when I'm being really horrible to it, well, not even just a lot, but just even a tiny bit, I constantly see it as twins. And I think, wow, if my left side was me as a twin and I was constantly comparing myself to the other twin, to my right side, I would hate having people tell me how horrible I look compared. And I know that's how some twins in real life are. They are constantly, and it's horrible. And so I try to imagine myself as that side, because it is me in a way. And I realized that I probably should be kinder to myself. And that does remind me of the TikTok trend that wasn't that long ago, where people, when they were being mean to themselves, they were reminding themselves that they were being mean to their younger self, their child self, and that kind of stopped them from being so horrible to themselves now as adults. Because you shouldn't be mean to a child, and you shouldn't be mean to yourself. And so you shouldn't be mean to one of your sides, and just accept that this is what your side looks like, and it's never going to be the way you imagine it to be, never the way you would have wanted it to be, but it's just the way it is, and you gotta move on and accept it. I remember during my last year of college, in Spanish, we were given a text and we had to ponder on it and answer certain questions as an exercise. And it was called El credo de las apariencias, los mutantes de la cirugía estética by Gabriel Cotimano. Excuse me for my terrible Spanish accent, but yeah, it was about the importance of appearances and people doing plastic surgery and the beauty standards and stuff like that, and it really made me think, and it even made me write a certain thing in 2019 or 2020, and I'm going to read it to you. How can we let ourselves be defined by something that is so insignificant? Because it holds so much value and importance in today's society or in humankind. Not only now, but defined by something that is so partial. It's significant in the sense that you can go very far or further with beauty, and a lot of celebrities show that, and it doesn't go unnoticed. We are pressured to look a certain way, and that wouldn't be the case if it didn't matter. It is insignificant in the sense that it's so limited, subjective and unattainable. Beauty can be found in flaws as it can be found in confidence. It's unattainable because no one finds the same thing beautiful. Each has their own definition of it. And something can be beautiful and appreciated, then a month later be the complete opposite. It comes and goes, and in that way it's so superficial. It's meaningless. You can't seize it, you can't trust it. In a way that permits some type of freedom, because who can stop you from finding something or someone beautiful? What allows a feature to be appreciated by its beauty and another to not be the norm? Nothing does. We still have barriers about someone's physique, but we don't know what beauty looks like, what beauty is, and we'll never know. So who am I to decide that I'm not pretty enough? Who are there to say that I'm not, or you're not allowed to be confident with the way you look, or to say that you don't fit in the standards? What are standards? I saw an advert about what was normal, because what is normal? It changes, it comes and goes with the fashion, with the trends, with the years, with the centuries. It can't be put into boxes. So yeah, it was a bit of a draft, so it could have been better, but that was kind of my thoughts at the time. And yeah, it's not about branding yourself pretty, but it's about realizing just how superfluous beauty is and the beauty standards of today are, and how the standards have always been for centuries. And so yeah, asymmetry is a big one. I'm trying to go back to the actual point of this video because I kind of went off track by going with a more broad approach. But I just want to say that just try to be neutral about the way you look at yourself in the mirror, because there will always be times where you won't feel pretty or you won't find certain things about yourself pretty, because again, beauty standards change constantly and you should not, feel the need to oblige by them. I mean, I don't even know how to conclude this video, but yeah, I wanted to make this video and dedicate a sketchbook spread to the two sides of my face to show how asymmetrical I am. But yeah, I feel like the importance of it is to acknowledge and accept that this is what you look like, and just realize just how meaningless it really all is, and how it's the least interesting thing about you. I don't know, how am I supposed to conclude this video? But yeah, I just fuck beauty standards, fuck society, just let yourself be yourself. And I don't know, I think one of the biggest thing that made me realize just how ridiculous finding yourself pretty is, because it's so subjective, again, as I said, but also it's so dependent on your mood. I mean, I personally don't wear makeup, and so from one day to the other I will look exactly the same, but some days I will still find myself completely ugly, and some days I find myself really pretty, and it's like, what is the difference between the two? And it's only my mindset. Literally, the times when I feel the prettiest is when I feel the happiest. So if it's just a mindset, try not to make yourself be pretty to feel pretty. Instead, just try to be as healthy as possible and as comfortable as you can, and be as happy as you can. But happiness is a very difficult mindset to go into, and it's a very short-lived and again limited as well. So I would say try to be as at peace with yourself as you can, and be as content, I would say, or as excited about things, and you'll probably feel a lot better about yourself, because again, having a great mindset really makes a whole difference, and the way you look really doesn't. Honestly, even people who are absolutely beautiful and are called the prettiest people in the world also have insecurities about the way they look. I mean, look at Megan Fox. So yeah, try not to look a certain way, but instead try to have a certain mindset. Yeah, work on your personality and not the way you look. And if you are a depressed, anxious person, then I'm very sorry to say this, but yeah, I mean, I'm a very lonely person, so I completely understand. It's very difficult to have that kind of mindset, but I don't know. I don't know how to finish this video, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video in any way and that, I don't know, you learned something. Probably not. I'm not very good at these kind of videos, honestly. I should really go back to what I know best, but I still thought it would be important to share my experience with the insecurity of asymmetry, and hopefully people can realize that there's such a bigger picture to it, and yeah, there are so many more interesting things about you, and your personality is way more important and it will outshine the rest. And if you hate your personality, again, I've been there. I'm sorry that's how you feel, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just gonna stop this video there before I make anyone feel worse than they did before, so yeah.